morning, sir.
I want you to know Emily blew it.
What happened?
She said, well, he'll be calling you at 8:30. I said, no, he won't. It's always 7:30 or 35 or something. Isn't that right? So I want you got a wet noodle handy or whatever. Don't worry about the stimulus is going to straighten it all out.
Absolutely.
Listen, I'm telling you what, this is the stupidest thing I've heard in a long time. Now, of course, you know the head-to-head butting with Sanford and King Hussein. And, pardon the disrespect, but I don't have much respect for that particular. I have ultimate respect for the office. However, the individual holding it now, I have very little. I mean, it hasn't shown me a whole lot. I mean, as far as responsibility is concerned, give me a break. Talking about hyperinflation, give me another one. Ooh.
Well, there's too many people in Washington, D.C., Rick, that think government's the answer. They think that more spending, more
government's
taxing,
the problem.
Absolutely.
You know that?
More borrowing. I mean, that is not the problem. It's empowering people to make decisions for themselves.
Look back in history.
Absolutely.
How many times has government come up with a solution that really permanently fixed a problem?
How many times name a situation where the government's done something better than the private sector?
None. Anybody with any semblance of a brain can understand that. And certainly, everybody wants to get into or blame it on, it's personalities. No, it isn't. It's irresponsibility that we're seeing.
Well, one of the things that we've tried to do, and I know you got a little blurb on this, we introduced the T Act.
Yeah, I just mentioned that.
Taxpayer Empowerment Advocacy Act. Think about what's going on around this country. We had a Tea Party in Greenville, South Carolina.
Going to have one coming up here.
That's right, 2,000 people. One in Cincinnati, where there were 4,000 people.
Ooh.
I mean, people are starting to understand what's going on up here.
You know that many state legislatures are reaffirming the 10th Amendment situation.
Well, exactly.
Inclusive of us. Now, what does that mean?
Exactly. I mean, the federal government wants to be everything to everybody.
You can't be.
No, and this T Act does a couple of things. I mean, I was on Neil Cavuto yesterday, and I told him, I said, Neil, this bill will save $520 billion over the next 5 years. And he goes, well, that used to be a lot of money, didn't it? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Flashbacks of Everett Dirksen.
Listen, you're a good South Carolina guy, and I'm a good Citadel man, and it's a visual thing for me. Let me explain it to you in South Carolina terms. If you had a $1,000 bill, and you stacked them one on top of the other.
Wait a minute, you printing them?
No.
We don't have that anymore.
Okay. Let's say up in Westminster, South Carolina, if you were printing $1,000.
Yeah, now they'll do it up there now.
And you were stacking them. If you had $1 million, you'd have a stack 4 inches tall.
Yeah, they're stacked behind the steel.
Okay,
by the way.
4 inches tall. If you had $1 billion, you'd have a stack roughly 36 stories tall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, if you had $1 trillion, you would have a stack 68 miles high.
That's hard to imagine.
People can't. They can't fathom. 4 inches for $1 million, 36 stories for $1 billion. Now you can imagine that. But $1,000 bill stacked on top of each other for $1 trillion is 68 miles high.
The 4 inches is fine with me, and there's not a greedy bone in my body.
Absolutely. Well, let me go back to the T Act. At $520 billion over 5 years it saves. It ties the growth of government to the rate of inflation. I'm not saying that government's not going to grow.
Wait a minute. How about we just say the rate of inflation today and not 8 or 10 months down the road, which we know it's going to be about 40%.
Well, that would be fine, too. It tightens up the definition on emergency spending, so if there is an actual emergency, all of a sudden you don't get a wish list. And it authorizes PAYGO, which is a provision that says if you're going to raise the budget somewhere else, guess what? You have to decrease the budget in another place.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, trying to be fiscally responsible. And we dropped it yesterday. We're starting to shop it. We're going to work on some Republicans and some conservative blue dog Democrats, and hopefully we'll get a little traction on it. It's going to be an uphill battle. I don't have to tell you, but we're going to do everything we can.
Well, That brings out a question that was brought forth yesterday, saying, and considering that they couldn't get through and ask you a question, is considering your race for the governorship.
Yeah.
Is saying, and got some concern with this, do you feel guilty about leaving Congress with your experience, turning it over to someone who has very little, if any, experience in the halls of Congress, and it takes them a year or two to just find out where the restroom is?
Well,
and that's what they're leaving it in these trying times, in these difficult times, challenging times that we are to face here, and we're just in the middle of it now, or beginning of it, really. Would we not be better served as people of this state by someone with experience who's been there, done that for a period of time, remaining there?
Well, I'm sure this caller meant it as a compliment, and I really appreciate that. But I honestly believe, Rick, if we're going to take this country back, we're going to do it one state at a time.
Yeah, says United States.
The guys at the federal government up here just don't get it. The majority just does not get it. And you're right. I mean, to reaffirm the 10th Amendment is important because, it is about states' rights. It is about empowering people, and we can do some things here. But I told Natalie, I told my wife the other day, I said, I can't wait. If I am blessed enough to be the governor, I can't wait for one of my colleagues in Washington, D.C., to call me one day and say, Gresham, how did you fix economic development? How did you fix your infrastructure? How did you fix your port problem? Because we want to do it in our state, and we want to model it in the federal government because we can do it, and we can start it right here in South Carolina.
Well, I'm sure that's not what the caller